as a city of council, and right now is you're a member of the legislative assembly. What was the most important issue in 2013 and 2014? First of all, as far as I know, the investment immigration is going to be eliminated as far as I know. Yeah. What do you think about it? A lot of immigrant people, including Korean community, they're started and they're really surprised and they're really shocking. And so the people are frustrating because they're just preparing the immigration to Canada. Yeah. But because of the program elimination,
they're left. They're just stuck. I mean, that's a federal issue, so that's not provincial, right? So that's federal. So I don't know the ins and outs of it, but you can see it filtering down provincially. And I'll give you an example of the province gave up English language programs, and they went federal, and so as a result, the English language supports that exist throughout the community are being cut off. So there was just an article in the paper this week. So Share Family and Community Services, and I was involved in helping get the funding together. It cost them $50,000 to operate English language groups, 20 of them throughout the Tri-Cities. Cost them $50,000 a year. It's mostly volunteers, there's one staff person. But it reaches hundreds and hundreds of new immigrants who can, for free, just get together and practice English with volunteers who will help them. Reading the newspaper, understanding local issues, but using English. And the groups are made up of people from all over the world. Bulgaria, Korea, China.
True diversity.
True diversity. And the only language they have in common is English. So it forces everybody to use English. Because I know that when you're from the same language group, if you're all from Korea, you're all going to want to speak Korean. It's really hard. But if there's 2 people from Bulgaria and 2 people from China and 3 people from Russia, you have to speak English.
Have to.
Right? And that's good. They've just lost their funding. And so all of that good work, reaching thousands of immigrants in the Tri-Cities, that is free for them to just practice, that is actually going to disappear. They've lost their funding, and they need, and it's a small amount of money. We also know that I got a letter from one of the local colleges that offers ESL programs for people who are professionals, so people who come from other countries, who are veterinarians or bankers or doctors or lawyers or engineers, professionals who need to develop their English in order to work here. Those programs are being cut. So there will be no places for immigrants to go to develop their English language skills that support their integration and also support them in getting professional jobs. I mean, it must be so difficult to come to a country where you want to make a really good life for your family. And it's a different language. And you have to learn the language in order to succeed. And there's no opportunities. There's no way to do that. And that disappoints me. That doesn't support people in being the best that they can be.
Because of the language barrier. And I don't think the racism is really issue in BC. But a lot of people, some people say that there are glass ceilings in the company. If I just go into the company, I'm Asian, I'm Korean and Chinese or Japanese. My qualification is just same as other people, but it's because of I'm just maybe their opinion, but because I'm a Asian people, and they're white and from here or born in Canada or something, so they got promoted, and I'm not, something like that. So a lot of people say that, and even in the textbook there's a term, explaining the glass ceiling, just female and male, and race, something like that.
It's subtle, right? It's not overt, right? It's not out in the open. It's underneath. I'm Jewish, and there was a time in Vancouver where Jews weren't allowed to join certain golf courses, or weren't allowed to live in certain neighborhoods. And we look the same as everyone else, but we were also sent out. So I have a similar history. It can appear at in some places, but I'm sure, but because I could blend in, people won't notice. But it would be very much more difficult if there's a visible
Exactly.
or a name
It's always
identifier.
hidden.
Right. My name Robinson doesn't sound Jewish. It's not.
really?
So nobody would recognize it. But if my name was Rosenberg, people would know, and would experience, in some places more subtle. I don't know what to do with that. I think, again, I don't have answers, but I do think that when we talk about it, and if we give it voice, that together we can come up with ways to challenge that. Because I think it's hard, I think, to challenge that covert kind of racism. Because I don't think people even realize that they're doing it. Right? And so how do we out that? I don't know.
Okay.
It's hard.
It's really hard. It's really hard to detect, and
Yeah.
it's really hard to solve the problem as well.
Yeah. But I think we need to talk about it. I think
Exactly.
the worst thing we can do is be silent on it.
Exactly.
So we
Raise
have
your
to,
voice.
well, we need to say, so is this a case of that? It's like, oh, I don't know. Let's take a look. And what does that mean? And oh, did I? I don't know. So we need to continually challenge each other on those things.
It's not really visual. Yeah. So that's why it's really hard to detect. Yeah. Please just tell us about the family life and hobbies and
Okay,
leisure.
so more personal. So I'm married and I have two children, a son who's 24 and a daughter who's 22. My daughter is a student at UBC in social work. She's finishing up this year. My son has a degree in political science from Western University in Ontario, and he is right now working for the Tri-Cities Chamber of Commerce as doing policy development around small business. My husband is has a PhD in ergonomics. He studies how people work to maximize productivity, minimize injury. So he actually just came from Korea. He was in Jeju.
Really?
Yes.
Beautiful
yes.
island.
Yes, he loved it. And he loved the sushi. He said it was still moving on the plate. And he loves the snacks. He brought home all those snacks, like Korean snacks. It was very fun. And all the candies. He brought home boxes of candies.
You like it as well?
No.
You are so honest. I like you.
But he loved it. And so it's honeymooner's paradise in Jeju, right?
Exactly.
And museums everywhere,
Yeah.
right?
You've been there?
No,
Not
I
yet.
couldn't go.
Okay.
But he promised if he gets a chance to go to Korea, that I would go with him. So
That's good.
So
Yeah.
I'd like to do that. And so he has his own business. He's a consultant, and I love spending
What kind
time.
of consultant?
He consults in ergonomics.
Ergonomics.
So making sure that people don't get injured on the job, finding ways for people to develop their work space or the work site so that there's no risk of injury. He's worked in hospitals, he's worked in mills, he's worked in offices.
You guys all work for the people.
Yeah.
You and your son.
Yeah, we all do. My daughter, we all do. It's a very strong value to serve others.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's just who we are.
So are you happy as a mother? Your son is doing political science? Or?
Yeah, I love being a mother.
Okay.
Jewish mothers and Korean mothers and Chinese mothers were all tiger mothers. We're all,
Tiger. Tiger mothers.
you will do as I say.
Yeah, you have to do it. You
So-
must do it.
Yes, and you're going to school and
Don't skip your class.
on there. So and we're bossy.
Yeah.
We're bossy.
Are you aware of that? Like, in Korean high school, like from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Not as bad, but pretty close. Well, because the value is that an education is an important thing. And yes, it will lead to jobs and all that, but the most important thing is that you have knowledge, that you know how to learn, because the world is a wonderful place. But if you don't know how to learn, if you can't be a good critical thinker, if you believe everything on the internet, then we have a problem, right? Like that. How are we going to be better as a generation? So, making sure my children are educated was the most important thing to me. Well, we do know, for example, in underdeveloped countries, that when you educate the women, the girls, everyone comes out of poverty, right? The girls. The girls make the difference. There's other choices. They make sure that their children are educated, and it just elevates the entire society to out of poverty.
That's why the donation has to be changed, like, the style and method of the donation. I mean, like, in the past, and still some of the countries and some of the people just giving their money to the underdeveloped country. It might help, but sometimes it doesn't help because like they don't know they can't read or something. So education is really important.
It's very
So
important.
nowadays a lot of organizations and NGOs, they're building a school and they're establishing their education systems for the underdeveloped countries. So
We're
I
seeing that
think
in
the paradigm
Afghanistan.
has been changing.
We're seeing it in Afghanistan right now. There's
Exactly.
focus on educating the girls and the women because they're actually going to make the difference. So, and I think we need to do that here and help, really focus on education. And certainly when I was running in May, that was one of the key pieces that I was, hanging on to, that we need to help our young people pay for university. When I went to university back in 1981, my first year, so people want to do the math, it makes me 50 years old. My minimum wage was $3 and either 65 cents or 85 cents. I don't remember.
Really?
$3 and let's say 85 cents, which now everyone laughs, right? Oh my God, how could you? And it's like, well, that was minimum wage. Guess what my tuition was for UBC for my first year in 1981?
I don't know. Really don't know. Like,
It was $845. So if you do the math, I could live at home, work all summer at minimum wage, and save $845. If I was careful, I could save that money and pay for school. My parents were starting a new business. They didn't have a lot of money, so I had to, that's what I did. Now, with minimum wage,
$10.25.
can you save $7,000 over a summer? No, you can't. You won't make that money. And so that shows how things have changed for our young people and their access to education. And so one of the things that I campaigned on, because one of the things the NDP were prepared to do, was to create grants for those young people. Just money. We will give you money. We will give you money to help pay for your education. Not a loan. It's a grant. We didn't win, so that doesn't exist. And young people have to maybe wait 2 years before, work, save money for maybe 2 years before they can go to school. And they can't go full-time, they have to go part-time because they have to keep making money because tuitions are that much more expensive. So that's one of the things, because education is important to me, so it's one of the things that I championed in the last election.
Got it. Interesting. So do you have any advices or messages for young people in this community or in the world or Canada-wide?
Yeah, well, so a couple of pieces of advice. Get an education. Be involved in your community. And I know life is busy and there's lots going on and friends and that, but read a newspaper. Read a newspaper. It will tell you.
Read the online or
just read. Scan the headlines. Just read a newspaper. Watch the news.
and read a trend.
Just pay attention to what's going on in the world around you. What's happening, and vote.
Vote.
Right. There are local elections coming up in November for municipal government, for the mayor and council. Only 20% of the eligible voters vote in that election. 20%. So that means if, you're not getting your say. In the last provincial election, 50% of voters voted. 50%. So half the people made decisions for the other half of the people. That's not good for democracy.
Exactly.
And we know that young voters, under 30, they're not voting. So what's happening is people over 60 are making decisions for people under 60.
That doesn't make sense.
I hope you all voted
Exactly.
in the last election. But that's what's happening, and that worries me. And so my message to young people is make sure you get out and vote. And with social media and all the media opportunities, there's no reason to not know what the issues are.
Yeah, but don't get us wrong, and don't get me wrong. We don't have the vote right.
Yet.
Still. Yet, yeah.
Right.
Once we have it, maybe
Good.
we're going to do it definitely 100%
Yeah.
and 200%.
Yeah. But Canadian citizens over the age of 18 have the right to vote, have the responsibility to vote, and we see that they're not doing it, and particularly young people. And I think we should all be worried about that. And even if you can't vote, it doesn't mean you don't have a voice. You can hold a lawn sign, you can work on a campaign, you can tell people in your life who are Canadian citizens that they should get out and vote. You can tell your friends who are eligible to vote to get out to vote. So just because you are not eligible doesn't mean you don't have a voice. I encourage everybody to use your voice. You can volunteer in a campaign, you can donate to a campaign, you can put a lawn sign in your front saying, I support this person. You can still participate. And you can tell people who have the responsibility to vote, remind them to vote.
Korean community, like,
Yeah.
what do you just think about like Korean community briefly?
Well, I mean, the people that I've met a lot of people from the Korean community, and it's diverse, just like any other community. There are some people who like certain things or don't like other things, and who have certain values, and so it's not one community, it's not one voice, and I think sometimes we need to recognize that. People say, well, what do Korean people think? Well, they're a diverse community, they think all kinds of things. And so I don't think it's right that we lump all people from one cultural group together. But what I have seen in the people that I've met, very hardworking. I love Korean barbecue. I do like Korean barbecue. I like that, and what I like about it is that we can talk as we cook and eat. Like, it's very social, and I like that. And I think that the Korean community that I have met that are here in Coquitlam, I think they're very courageous. I think it takes a lot of courage to leave your home, everything that you know with familiar foods and all that, familiar language and culture, and to come here. Very different ways of thinking, of being, and so the Koreans that I have met, that's one of the things that I have experienced, is that they're courageous people.
Vancouver is one of the most livable cities in the world. And the huge reason is like, diversity, like you said, like, a lot of people just combine together, and, a lot of ethnic groups and a lot of people from other countries. And that's why, Canada, the nickname of Canada is a mosaic, right?
Yes.
Mosaic society. If we just combine all the tiles, we're gonna have one picture, right? So that's a beautiful concept and idea. But the tile can't be one. There are a lot of tiles, so they have their communities.
Right.
So that people told me that that's why Canada and Vancouver and BC can't be just one. They have their communities. You know what I mean, right?
No.
Because still Korean people
together.
get along with, hang
Sure.
together, and
Right.
they have their.
When my family immigrated here from Eastern Europe, I mean, they came from different places, but they had a common language called Yiddish, even though they came from Yiddish. So they came from Russia, they came from Lithuania, they came from Poland, but they had a shared language and they had shared foods. Slightly different, but for the most part, the Jewish community came together. And at the beginning, they hang together. My great-great-grandmother only spoke Yiddish. She never learned English, much like I'm sure your grandmother might not speak English. She probably speaks Korean if she lives here. But over the generations, you filter out, right? And you contribute. You bring all of those values, you bring all of that hard work, you bring all of those resources. So at the beginning, during new immigrations, of course you would hang together, right? You've left your country. You've left everything that's familiar. You find ways to stick together because it's familiar and it's safe and it's comfortable. Over time, it starts to integrate. And so the challenge is to make sure that you're doing that. The Italians did that too. If you go to North Burnaby, it's where the Italians lived. And there's great Italian restaurants as a result. Here we have great Korean restaurants as a result. So it's the food that I love. It's all the mixture of the food. So I think over time, we need to be patient. Over time, it will filter through. And we've seen it time and time again. The Irish came and they hung together. So they brought us the pub. So there's different things that different cultures brought us. You guys brought us karaoke, right? So everyone brings something, and we all benefit for that.
Okay, yeah. So I think we better to be a world of the citizen of the world, just rather than a citizen of a country.
Yeah.
That's why you just call that, like, globalization and global citizenship. Oh, for sure you have only one citizenship, like, passport, right? One of my professor, he has like a 5 or 6 passports. And he said that, like, just don't be a citizen of one country. You have to be a citizen of the world. That's really complicated. And
well, it is, as long as we know where our values, as long as we have some clarity about what our values are. Because, in some countries, there are certain values around, where diversity is bad, right?
Yeah.
We want to just hang together. But if that is conflicts with your values, so what's your relationship then with that country? Or there are countries, I was listening to the radio this morning as I was getting dressed, Jimmy Carter was speaking about rape culture in African nations. And, and that's a problem. And those go against my values. So how do we challenge those countries to say that that's not okay? So, or boys are preferred to girls, and so they have selective abortions. And you say that that's wrong, because in the end you have a society of boys and you don't have enough brides for them. It creates a problem, an imbalance. We're seeing that in China, seeing that in India.
Yeah.
So you can be a citizen of the world, but with that come certain values. And how do you, move those values forward? It's always a challenge.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it for today. Thanks for your time,
Sorry
Selina.
to just squeeze you in.
Yeah. One of the healthiest conversation in my life, in my whole life.
It was helpful?
Yeah, it was healthiest. That really healthy conversation, one of the most excellent conversation in my whole life.
Oh, good.
Ever and ever. Yeah.
I'm so thrilled. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time today.
No, not a problem.
I hope,
really, thank you for doing this and